When I tell people that my scholarly interest is in transgression, I'm often met with shock, followed by the inevitable question of, am I interested in it because I derive pleasure from it? Now, this is, of course, a sensible question, but I think it profoundly truncates and limits the discourse of transgression by subsuming it under the master signifier of pleasure. For me, transgression is about so much more than just pleasure, and while many transgressive acts do necessitate, or at least bring into the conversation, pleasure, transgression is so much more. Transgression is mystification, fascination, exploration, experimentation, transformation, confrontation, risk. In other words, real. I believe that it is a deep-seated belief of transgressive artists of all sorts, be they visual artists, writers, filmmakers, sculptors, which is that there's something beautiful in the eruption of the undeniably real. In an interview discussing his 2022 film Crimes of the Future, David Cronenberg, the so-called founder or father of body horror, said that he wasn't really satisfied with this notion of body horror. As he puts it,
Yeah. And they say I'm the inventor of the body horror genre, or whatever. I've never called it that, and I think I wouldn't have called it that because to me it's not horrific. It's the body beautiful or something, not body horror.
Like a surgeon, transgressive artists find something beautiful in what is commonly seen as ugly, base, unseemly, revolting, obscene, disdainful, shameful, etc. This is a prominent subject in Crimes of the Future, in which the human pain response is currently under evolutionary reconsideration. In some undisclosed future, the human pain response has become basically obsolete as bodies writ large are undergoing significant mutagenic transformations. And in its wake, our main two characters, Saul Tensor and Caprice, are two performance artists, and Caprice performs live surgeries on these rapidly mutating new organs that have formed inside Tensor's body. And the film intersects a number of transgressive questions in a very interesting way, but one of them is the idea, if pain has become obsolete, what does that mean for eroticism, sensuality, sex, and pleasure? How do people interact with their bodies? How do we do that in a world where the pain response is now obsolete? Perhaps we now need to infuse sensuality, sexuality, eroticism, bodily feeling with something that would traditionally give us pain, but in this context is seen as a site of experimentation and transformation. And while the film wants to see something beautiful in all of this, we have, for example, a very interesting scene where Tensor gets a zipper put into his stomach, and Caprice opens up the zipper and fillets his innards. Very interesting, very weird scene. That does, of course, want to make us think that there is something beautiful or erotic about all this. Transgression does not just work for the master signifier of pleasure or the beautiful. It is not a slave to transcendent metaphysics, trying to transcend the bodily to get to, the form of the beautiful, like Plato would be talking about. Rather, it wants to find value in all, such that beauty and ugliness are valuable in their own irrevocable ways. They sort of become obsolete as non-overlapping magisterium. Georges Bataille, in his Eroticism, starts off the book by really challenging this notion, this separation of life and death, and therefore of pain and pleasure, saying eroticism is assenting to life up to the point of death. Eroticism, unlike simple sexual activity, is a psychological quest independent of the natural goal. Eroticism is assenting to life even in death. Now, what does this mean? Well, it means that death, in part, is a fulfillment of eroticism and of life. That life cannot be what it is, not only without the prospective pole of death, but the imminent factuality of death, the feeling it quake in your bones and the way that it impacts us. Nowhere do we see this more clearly than in the works of Antonin Artaud, who was a really pioneer of transgression in theater. And his writings are really interesting because we feel this pain, we feel this confrontation with bodily and mental and spiritual limits. He writes, "I consider myself in my minutiae. I put my finger on the precise point of the fault, the unadmitted side. For the mind is more reptilian than you yourselves, messieurs. It slips away snake-like to the point where it damages our language. It leaves it in suspense. I am the man who has most felt the stupefying confusion of his speech in its relations with thought. I am the man who has most accurately charted the moment of his most intimate, his most imperceptible lapses. I lose myself in my thought, actually, the way one dreams, the way one subtly slips back into one's thought. I am the man who knows the inmost recesses of loss." Now, of course, this is very sad, but it also becomes a site of possibility for all of these transgressive artists. The idea that in these lacunae, in these gaps, or these lapses, as Artaud puts it, we see a site of burgeoning possibility, of futurity waiting to explode. As such, going beyond the mere differentiation between beauty and ugliness, Louis-Ferdinand Céline says in Journey to the End of the Night, "After all, why wouldn't there be an art of ugliness as well as beauty? Maybe it's a gift that needs to be cultivated." And indeed, that is what transgressive artists do. They transgress both so that the beautiful and the ugly can be seen for themselves, not so that the ugly can be surpassed, repressed, or used as a mere stepping stone for beauty, but as something interesting and valuable in itself. The hard part is, we are bodily, not to mention socially, culturally, and morally, averse to much that has the potential to yield valuable experiences. We are both indelibly marked by our bodily state as one of necessity, as we are poised against it as voyagers amidst a sea of bodily instincts, reflexes, and responses. This makes transgressive literature about much more than just negation, more than destroying the bounds in surpassing them. It is also about the internal battle with the very conditions for experiencing the passing of bounds, and hence growth and ecstasy. Perhaps nowhere is this more evident than in the work of William S. Burroughs. And I'm going to use Naked Lunch just as an example here, but you could easily look in any of his works. In Burroughs' writings, it is evident that there is a conversation between the body and itself as it copes with and negotiates a paradox of feeling and suffering, pleasure and pain. For him, this is nowhere more clear than in the case of drug use, and especially with opioids. These drugs, being as they are, fundamentally restructuring one's neurological, physiological pain response, and hence experience of pleasure, they produce the greatest pleasure at the same time that they efface its possibility, erasing the bodily basis on which pleasure depends. Pleasure and pain are established as being parasitic of one another. And to truly understand one, Burroughs thinks, one must be able to understand the other as well. I think of this passage often when I think of really terrifying instances of this confluence of opposites. Provident junkies, known as squirrels, keep stashes against a bust. Every time I take a shot, I let a few drops fall into my vest pocket. The lining is stiff with stuff. I had a plastic dropper in my shoe and a safety pin stuck in my belt. You know how this pin and dropper routine is put down. She seized a safety pin caked with blood and rust, gouged a great hole in her leg which seemed to hang open like an obscene, festering mouth, waiting for unspeakable congress with the dropper, which she now plunged out of sight into the gaping wound. But her hideous, galvanized needle, hunger of insects in dry places, has broken the dropper off deep in the flesh of her ravaged thigh, looking rather like a poster on soil erosion. But what does she care? She does not even bother to remove the splintered glass, looking down at her bloody haunch with the cold, blank eyes of a meat trader. What does she care for the atom bomb, the bed bugs, the cancer rent, friendly finance waiting to repossess her delinquent flesh? Sweet dreams, pant upon Rose. Right, so in this case, there's just this total apathy that takes over because of the profound cellular, neurological, physiological restructuring of our pain response, of our very relationship and experience of the body, therefore. So we can see here that transgression is very actively concerned with the dialectic that goes on with bodily, mental transformation. It is concerned with investigating the internal dynamics of the process, not just a goal-oriented destruction of the bounds that exist. No, in fact, transgressive literature is very interested in taboos. It is very interested in shame. It's interested in all of the cultural institutions that maintain the status quo that becomes, in Burroughs' case, an object of derision through the form of satire, which is deeply interested in parodying, copying, and pastiching the existing devices, norms, structures in order to make a point. It acts through them, not past them or beyond them. It does not speak to a future by jumping over the present, but by wading through the shit that exists. It wants to get down and dirty because it feels that transgression in this way is the only way to truly live. Because it means to be actively concerned with, interested in, mystified by, experimenting with the limits of the present. I think this is why transgressive literature is so important for me, because it allows me to think about trauma, pain, suffering, anxiety, perils, as something important, as something essential about living in my current moment as I am, both socially, culturally, politically, personally. All of these form a mass of interrelated norms and violations that exist together, equiprimordially. And I think this is an intensely fascinating discussion, and I hope that I've perhaps convinced you to read just some of the many writers and works here, which can prove incredibly interesting for discussion and thought. That being said, that's it for this lecture. I hope it's been somewhat interesting. You can check out any of my other lectures I've done on postmodernism, German idealism, gender theory, post-colonial studies, and other classic literature. You can also become a channel member for $5 a month and gain access to, among other things, a private philosophy Zoom. I also have super thanks if you just like to make a one-time donation to the channel. It helps me purchase the books necessary to bring y'all content and gives me a sense of security that I do not take for granted. That being said, that's it for this lecture, and I will see you in another one.